Okay, I think we might be live. Hello, everybody. It's Uncle Grumpy. Let me check and make sure before we get too far into this. I got to get to the right page. Okay, let's see.
I'll change my background while you're checking.
All right. I think we might be live, but I'm not sure yet. It's not showing up yet. Oh, there we go. Okay, give me just a minute, folks. I need to share this to my page and maybe a couple other pages. Let's see. Well, you're just getting all hippy dippy there, aren't you, Lawrence?
Well, this is my favorite one.
Is it? Yeah, that's a little creepy, though. That's just a little creepy. Okay, let's see. Folks, if you don't mind, please like and share this. I'm just sharing it to a couple pages. I need to put it on back on my personal page and to the OCNN. Let's see. Okay. Hey, while I'm doing this, Lawrence, how you doing besides playing with your computer? How's things going for you?
It is grading week. My
Grading? Are you
classes.
saying that it's like hard on you? It's grading, or that you have to like decide A, B, C, or darn it, kids, you failed?
That's right. Final papers for my graduate seminar were due yesterday, and today I just wasn't quite in the mood to grade, and so that'll probably start tomorrow. And tomorrow as well is when the final papers are due for my 17th, 18th century philosophy class. So basically, those things will be done this weekend, and grades will be posted Monday or Tuesday. And then I can get back to research. Basically, it's grading research, and then teaching research, and grading research.
And what is that research?
Well, 75% of everything that I write nowadays is by invitation from one publisher or another.
What does that mean? Tell everybody what that means.
Well, a lot of what I do is for Cambridge University Press. I don't know if I have any volumes sort of immediately handy, but
you don't have one right there in your cabin.
Yeah, that's right. Way back there behind the fireplace, I have a bunch. But somebody decides to put together a volume on, say, Kant and Baumgarten, and I'm asked to write a chapter on Kant's use of book 4 of Baumgarten's Metaphysica, how it shaped Kant's lectures on the philosophical doctrine of religion or whatever, something like that. So I'll write a chapter along those lines. Or, a special issue for a journal. And so the most recent thing that I finished was a special Israeli journal, Philosophia, has a issue coming out on religion and politics. And so I was asked to write a chapter having to do with Kant on that, and so on. So the next thing is I'm a guest editor for a journal, and so I have to basically go through all the symposium contributions, and I have to write basically something of my own in relationship to it. And so that's the next thing I think on my docket. But there's a list.
Hold on one second. Sorry, I have to mute that.
I have to basically go through all the symposium contributions.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I'm probably boring people, but basically, I write articles and book chapters for major academic presses and journals, and sometimes I actually have the time to write something that just I'm just motivated to write. But 2/3, 3/4 of what I write is already just commissioned stuff. Like
On that note of what you sometimes are just drawn to write, you did just recently write an article, correct? That went in the Oklahoman.
oh yeah, you know, the op-eds are sort of a different animal, but yeah, in addition to all my academic writing, for the last 2 years, I've been writing cannabis-related op-eds for the Oklahoman, for the Tulsa World, for the Journal Record, for the Gazette, and so on.
Okay, I'm trying to get the light here, right? So my face quits disappearing on people like
Oh,
that.
you're even more disappeared now.
Yeah.
You're the ghost. You're the ghost haunting the halls of.
All right. Well, this is what we're going to have then, folks. Maybe I need to change pictures. We'll try that. But look, folks, I wanted to take everybody inside the Capitol. If you go in right here and go down about, let's see, I'm pretty sure this is the 4th floor. So all the way down at the end is the floor leader's office, my representative. Let's see, it looks just like this on the 2nd floor, and halfway down would be Representative Fettgetter's office. Anyway, we wanted to go inside the Capitol and take a look at House Bill 3228 tonight. The good, the bad, and the ugly, we'll say, although we're not too worried about the ugly because we're running out of time. So this just may be what the best and really pretty good option that we have for this year, but we wanted to go over it with you guys and give our perspective from that of patients, not of business owners, but of patients and what we think of this bill. Let's see. As most of you know, this is a bill that Ron Durbin has been working on with Representative Fettgetter. He's a lawyer, so he's been able to put it all together in a legal way. It's basically a combination of all the other bills from the year. Since because of this virus, since we're in a limited time, we're getting one cannabis bill, and we're going to be real lucky if we get that. So that's what this is about. There's some pros and cons to it. Most of it's pretty good. We had a meeting with Ron. We made some suggestions. He was nice enough to give us that time and took all those suggestions, and all those changes have been made. We'll talk about those changes as well as some of the other stuff that it does. So, Lawrence, you've got something, you can pull it up here and show us, right? And we can look at what we have.
A few screens to kind of walk people through what the bill contains. Just to start out, you know, anybody who actually looks at a copy of this bill, I've had some interactions with people that give me the sense that they don't quite understand how to read legislation. And so pretty much everything in this bill is amendatory to existing law. And so section by section by section of 3228 takes the existing laws, House Bill 2612, Senate Bill 1030, and so on, and tweaks it here and tweaks it there and tweaks it here. So when you go through all of this, you'll usually see under this the section header for this bill, it'll say amendatory, and it'll be amendatory to this set of laws. And then whatever is in that section in normal type is existing law, the law that's already been around that was passed, let's say, last year. And then the parts that are underlined will be new law. So just anybody who wants to have a look at this, if you read it through, and it's big, it's whatever, 60 pages or something like that. Most of it is existing law. There's only little bits and pieces throughout that are changes to existing law. And a lot of those changes we think are really good. So there is a few little glitches, a few little problems, but overall, we're going to walk you through and just talk through everything that we saw in it and see what you guys hopefully think about it. All right, so I'm going to screen share now, just a basic highlights overview. I just want to make sure, Chris, are you able to see it right now when I have the key points?
Yep, we can all see it. Let's
Okay.
go over that.
Okay, so there's a lot of details. There are a lot of other little changes, but these I think of as the biggest things that are happening in 3228. First of all, that you don't have to be a resident of the state of Oklahoma in order to be a patient. So if you have family members, somebody who needs RSO for cancer or whatever, coming in from Texas or whatever, something like that, somebody who is a pediatric patient coming in from Kansas, they don't have to reestablish residency in Oklahoma in order to get a patient card. And of course, that's what was typical around the country. So families from Oklahoma would have to move to Colorado, establish residency in Colorado when they had a medical without a recreational program. So one of the things that really is an important goal for us, because key always for us is improving access, especially medical access, is it's saying people of Texas, people of Kansas, people of the entire of the country and world, you can come here and be healed by cannabis. You don't have to become an Oklahoma resident. You don't have to buy a property. You don't have to lease a property. You can come here and get a patient card, maintain your residence wherever you are, and be able to purchase cannabis for your medical needs.
I do want to say I'm most happy with that one, because that was a dream I came up with last summer, at the beginning of the summer, and something one of the main reasons I moved here was that particular striking of that language. Go ahead.
You know, we are on a mission, right? We're on a mission to change federal law, right? The goal is not simply so that each of us individually can have legal access to cannabis. We only have quasi-legal access to cannabis, right? Federal law is still illegal. You're still violating federal law every time you purchase, possess, and utilize cannabis. So the goal ultimately has to be changing federal law, ending prohibition. It's ended in Canada, it's ended in Uruguay, it's about to end in Mexico, right? And in many other countries, 50 countries around the world have legal medical marijuana. We don't even have that in the United States at the federal level. So the goal for us, part of our goal as activists, is to change federal law. And how does that happen? That happens not just by changing the laws inside the state, but by helping people of other states change those laws. So by allowing people of other states to come to Oklahoma to use cannabis here to discover its medical value, they can take that message back to the people of their state and get those things changed. We need Texas to change.
Yeah, I keep saying that the people of Oklahoma went to Colorado. If we didn't go to Colorado and California and see that the sky did not fall, then we wouldn't have come back here and fought so hard for this.
So as part of the long-term big goal, right, for the activist, we have to change federal law. And that means, like right now, we don't have DUI legislation still. Every single person who's using cannabis, if you get behind the wheel, you're in violation of state law. It's federally illegal. The state's not going to change the DUI law. And even if you're not in any psychoactive state whatsoever, if you have a metabolite from use 30 days ago and you get behind the wheel, you're technically officially DUI and you can have your license suspended. And it's a lot of things like that may not change until federal law changes. So number one of the great things that 3228 does, that's part of the cannabis revolution that's going around this country, and our continuing role in trying to push that revolution, is that people from anywhere will be able to come here and get a patient license and purchase cannabis. That's number one. Number two, dispensaries. Sorry. So number two is many dispensaries, many businesses have wanted to be able to make their own pre-rolls. So one of the other things that this bill does is it allows every dispensary to make their own pre-rolls in-house. Those pre-rolls can't include any concentrates. The bill, unfortunately, doesn't allow dispensaries to work basically like traditional apothecaries and mix oils and mix tinctures and so on. I wanted those things. I wanted every dispensary to be able to customize tinctures and vapes for the patients. We didn't get that. But what we did get was dispensaries will now be allowed to make their own pre-rolls in-house.
So let's hope that as patients we benefit that, because we benefit that by the dispensaries being able to sell pre-rolls at a considerably cheaper price.
Yes.
So let's hope we notice some difference there down the road. Go ahead.
And by the way, I assume what that element of the law will allow is if you walk into a dispensary and you want to have particular combinations of flower, they might be able to custom make, right, a pre-roll for you on the spot. Or you come in and you say, yeah, I want a 5-to-1 hemp to THC pre-roll. They might be able to do that for you on the spot. So my goal as an apothecary, my goal is to take the program and make it as medical as possible. Have a recreational program in addition to it, but the medical program, we need things like an apothecary-like system in dispensaries. I wanted to have the ability of a dispensary to mix vape oils, to be able to mix tinctures. We ended up getting, pushback on that, but at least dispensaries will be able to custom make and make in-house pre-rolls for their customers. That's number 2. Go on to 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 3 is maybe the one that I'm most passionate about. Way back when the Department of Health had its early sets of rules back in 2018, and I met with the Cannabis Task Force there and the Commissioner for Health and saw that they were not allowing delivery, I argued with them, like, why are you not allowing delivery? There's nothing in law. There's nothing in law that prohibited prohibited dispensaries from having delivery. But I couldn't get them to budge. And they basically said the Department of Health will not allow delivery until the law itself allows for it. So this is something I've been fighting for 2 years. And let me tell you why. A lot of people, I think, just don't understand what it's like to live with severe medical problems. If you have severe enough medical problems where you're in constant pain, where you have a seizure disorder, where you have severe muscle spasms, if it impedes your ability to basically get out of your house, then it's an ordeal for you. It's the huge mammoth thing you have to do that day to get out of your house to buy your essentials. And to make it easier on a person who struggles like that, we ought to have delivery. Grocery stores can deliver. Pharmacies can deliver. So we're now basically making it possible for dispensaries to deliver as well. So it's for people who are homebound, and if not technically homebound, still who have severe mobility issues. People in wheelchairs, people with seizure disorders, people in severe pain. This is a huge a huge benefit for them. And even if these people had caregivers, getting your caregiver available that day at that time when you need something cannot always, is not always an easy thing. And if you're the caregiver of, say, somebody in your house, you might need to have somebody watch that person so that you could actually go out to the dispensary to buy the medicine for that person. And the logistics of just getting out of your house when you're dealing with people with severe medical problems is difficult. It's exhausting. And if you're healthy, you just don't quite see that.
Now, well, hold on. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to mention. I watched Ron Durbin's video earlier talking about this same bill, 3228, also in support of this bill. Again, Ron had a meeting with us, and we discussed some issues we had, and he addressed all those issues, and we're in support of this bill too. But he mentioned in his video, he was not for delivery. Okay. And I don't say that to be aggressive in any way. What I'm trying to point out here is, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. But he gives it from a perspective of him watching out for the businesses. And he describes why, and we understand why. It was the ice cream truck theory that we talked about, and we all agreed on some language that could get rid of that. But I want to emphasize what Lawrence is talking about here, because I've watched Lawrence for so long push this one particular issue, among others, but this one for sure, that it's important, I think, to hear why and how, and we get where we get, and how we got where we got with this. And I think delivery is extremely important. And when we get it, Lawrence, I intend to say thank you. But go ahead. I just wanted to point that out.
I appreciate it. I have been in many meetings arguing for delivery for 2 years, and I gave everybody one reason why. Let me give you another reason why. Another reason why is because the inventories of dispensaries are overwhelmingly high THC. Most dispensaries have absolutely nothing in their inventory that isn't high THC or very, very, very little. It's extremely hard to find any flower that is more CBD than THC. That is, say, a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 CBD to THC, or vape cartridges, or concentrates, or edibles. They're out there, right? They're out there, but they're extremely hard to find. Very specific. Like if you wanted to find, say, a 5-to-2 strain, 5 CBD to 2 THC, good luck, right? You know, trying to find something like that is really hard, and Weed Maps and Leafly aren't particularly user friendly to find those kinds of things. You can look at individual menus, but those kinds of searches are not easy.
Okay, Lawrence, I hate to put you on the spot,
Yep.
but if you don't mind, I'm going to a little bit. Not that it's really something I really think you should share too much about, but I've had some people tell me that they don't even believe, I don't know why, but some when criticizing us saying that, you don't even use cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I always come back with, well, you just don't know Lawrence. And you might be right. He doesn't use THC, but he has a need. Could you mind sharing a little of that, if you don't mind, is so they understand why this is so important to you?
So I have scoliosis. I have it from basically the middle of my neck to the middle of my back, upper back. It's C4 to T4. I have chronic pain bad enough that I often have to lay down during dinner time. It's just too painful for me to even make it through dinner. Certain positions, basically angling my head downwards, is painful. So like doing things like eating is quite painful. When I sit and I work and I type, that's painful. So that through the day, the pain gets worse and worse and worse. And it's more or less by the time I get to dinner, I'm just in too much pain to do anything for the rest of the day. And so, I'm doing this video now, I'm in pain. People may not recognize that I'm in pain because I'm not like screaming or in pain, but I'm definitely in pain. And if I weren't sitting up doing this video right now, I'd just be laying down.
So you're any need for cannabis there at all? What's your search here?
So let me sort of say a few things that I personally do not like the psychoactive effect of THC. It's simply just, I like to have a clear head. I don't mind it as sort of the exception to what sort of one's normal mental state is, but I like to maintain a busy intellectual life, and so it's just using THC is not something that really works for me. Certainly not as an ongoing daily pain management. But nevertheless, I find CBD helpful. Trace amounts of THC are fine. And I hope to be able to eventually find some sort of permutation between CBD and THC that's workable for me. But nevertheless, right, as it is, I avoid stuff that has psychoactive effects. And so I look, it doesn't mean I necessarily am going to be buying these things, and I'm kind of waiting. Honestly, I don't know if I'll really be comfortable with any of this until federal law changes. But I know that there are lots of other people in my shoes. And so it's not just about me, but I just know many other people personally, people that I've talked to who are one way or another. These are individuals. I was at a dispensary today and I was talking to the dispensary owner. We had the exact same perspective on the incredible importance, the incredible value of medical strains that are dominant in CBD, and how utterly underutilized they are in this state. She's coming in from Connecticut that has a very, very medical program. People here in Oklahoma may not realize what medical programs look like in other states. And so she basically felt like the state doesn't have anywhere near enough representation of medical strains that are higher in CBD than THC. And so she's working on including them at her dispensary. She had one that was about 2-to-1 CBD to THC. She's going to be getting another one that's going to be 4-to-5 CBD, basically 4-to-1 CBD or 5-to-1 CBD to THC. And so so back to the issue of delivery then, the point is this, that there's all these people out there who can't find these kinds of products. They go to the nearby dispensaries, they look at one thing in Weed Maps or another thing in Weed Maps, and people struggle and they just give up, right? There are people who get medical cards, and then just give up because they can't find things that help them. There are a lot of people that right off the bat, excited, let's see if this helps me with my pain or whatever, and everything is just high THC. They can't use it, they can't function, and they give up. And all those other strains out there and products that are higher in CBD, if we had delivery, then two things. First of all, it allows people to go well beyond, right, just the nearest dispensaries to them, right, that they could search much more broadly because they don't have to drive so far. We're talking about people with major medical problems often. And so it could be on the other side of Oklahoma City, or the other side of Tulsa, it could be 30 miles away, that they might just happen to have that strain, right, that they've read about, that they know is particularly good for lupus or whatever it might be. And so because we don't have enough of those kinds of strains in dispensaries, delivery increases availability. And the other side of it is, if we had delivery, then in all likelihood, we're going to have a much more effective searchable mechanism for people to find. I'm looking for a 3-to-2 Harlequin within 30 miles of my zip code. Tell me who has it. What is it called? I Heart Jane is one such website. And if more and more dispensaries got on with a I Heart Jane as opposed to Leafly or Weed Maps, then that would work extremely well with delivery, where people can do those kinds of searches. So the need here is not just for people who can't even leave their house. The need here is also because we do not have adequate presence of a lot of medically important products in our dispensaries. Overwhelmingly, 98% of everything you're going to see in a store is high THC. And people who need something else need to have access to it. And delivery will help get that access.
Now, I want to emphasize to everybody out there, because I see some posts, Lawrence is not saying that high THC is a bad thing. Okay.
No, it's just not the same for everybody.
Right. He's talking about what he's looking for, what he needs, why delivery. I've asked him to make delivery personal, why delivery is personal to him. So his little talk here about CBD versus THC is not to downplay THC, but to emphasize the need for delivery.
Let me just add this, that, probably a lot of you know that I have a PhD, that I'm a professor at OSU, that, I approach all of this with a personal passion, an ethical commitment, a need for social change. But I also look at a lot of this from the perspective of science as well. And so obviously I understand that a high THC product is the kind of product that will be needed for certain types of medical conditions. But it's also the kind of product that can make certain types of medical conditions worse. There's a lot of data showing that high THC products can increase pain. Depends on the type of pain. If it's inflammatory pain versus a neurological pain, all right? So it depends on the type of pain. But for a number of pain conditions, quite a few number of pain conditions, the optimal ratio is about 10-to-1 CBD to THC. And there's significant numbers of publications showing that increasing THC doses will actually make the efficacy of cannabis less, often to the point of increasing pain under the impact of THC. Depends on the medical condition, right? And so what we need to have the variety, right? I'm not saying only CBD versus THC. What I'm saying is we need to have access to the variety, just like I argued that what we need to have in our dispensaries is an apothecary system. So we can tailor CBD to THC ratios for each customer. One customer might need 5:1 THC to CBD. Another customer might need 5:1 CBD to THC. We're all different.
Okay.
Our medical needs are different.
Okay, let's move on to number 4.
Okay, number 4 is, and I don't have enough information as to all the backstory behind this, but this is nevertheless something that has been promoted within the halls of the legislature, which is to separate the OMMA from the Department of Health. One of the reasons why had to do with all the scandals that had to do with the medical program as it was emerging in 2018. So in 2018, basically, the state medical board, the Department of Health board, basically were trying to basically ignore law, and they were advised against doing what they were doing by former general counsel for the Department of Health, Julia Zell, and they went ahead and voted unlawfully to ban flour, if you recall that. And so part of the reason why the OMMA is being separated from the Department of Health is because we saw back in 2018 that the Board of Health was so intensely opposed to the legalization movement that they were willing to violate law to stop it from happening. All right. Now, this is 2 years later. And so the need to separate the OMMA from the Department of Health, there may be ongoing issues about conflict between the agenda of the Department of Health versus the OMMA. I don't know. I'm not privy to that. But part of what led to this need to change it was what I regard as the malfeasance of our Board of Health back in 2018.
Well, and at this point, we've got Kirkpatrick running the OMA, who everybody agrees is doing a wonderful job. So, the goal is that he move over along with that. And I guess he stays for at least a year or two, something like that. There is some sort of things being worked out there. Yeah. And so, and the health department, well, they, like Lawrence has explained, they've got their own things they've got to worry about. It's best for everyone to just move it away, and we won't have to worry about a repeat of what happened before.
Yeah, the perspectives that a lot of people had was that the employees of the Department of Health before Kirkpatrick came in were not cannabis friendly, right? That they wanted to put up as many barriers as they could, right? To extreme levels back in 2018, but even for the year that followed. So we just did not see a culture in the Department of Health that was not even, it wasn't just that they weren't cannabis friendly, but that they were hostile to the law itself. They were hostile to existing law that legalized cannabis. And so the cultural divide there between what was needed for a administration, for a regulatory agency for cannabis, and what the culture was for the Department of Health was such that, things were not functioning.
Okay, we're already coming up on almost 45 minutes, so let's go to move on to the next part and move this.
Okay. So those are the highlights, right? Those are the highlights, and I'm just going to, as quickly as possible, go through all the particular changes that I spotted. So first of all, Section 1F, just as mentioned, patients don't need to be Oklahoma residents. Section 1I, all patient records, not just the application records, are now expressly sealed and cannot be accessed by any government entity without a warrant. So it adds to our privacy. Section 1M, they now introduce a patient renewal fee as an alternative to a new application fee. It allows the Department of Health, the OMA, to set that fee, so we don't know what it's going to be yet, but it allows it as an alternative to, I think it's the $100 fee. Um, Section 2D, as mentioned before, dispensaries can make pre-rolls. Section 2E, dispensaries can deliver to patients, as mentioned before. Section 6C, it fixes a real serious problem in Senate Bill 1030, which is that Senate Bill 1030 authorized the release of patient information to law enforcement. So Section 6C stops that, right? It basically got sort of behind the scenes stopped, but that could have been disastrous. And now the language is being fixed to prevent it. Section 6E, that businesses will only need a certificate of compliance from their incorporated area. So if you're in a city or whatever, if you're as opposed to an unincorporated part of land, you need a certificate of compliance, but now you'll only need one with your initial application. You won't need additional ones with renewals unless there's a change in location. Section 723, and this is something that I think there's a reasonable concern about, that it clarifies the language concerning the seed to sale tracking. And what it does now is it makes it clear that that seed to sale tracking actually goes from the starting point of seeds onwards, not just when the seed is germinated or rooted or whatever. And so that could be thought of as just additional annoying record keeping.
Right, but we don't even have a seed to sale tracking program picked by the state yet, so we don't need to worry about that this time. We can let that ride and fight that battle down the road.
I kind of think of it as something that could be dealt with down the road. If it seems to be really onerous, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a grower processor, and he said he's been doing it all along. He's been tracking seeds right from the start all along. So I'm not a business person, and my focus is always on patient needs. So these kinds of business debates, I just leave to other people. Section 10J, I just have it here briefly stated, the department has emergency powers. So basically, let's say the department finds out that there's a toxin or whatever in this bait. The department can go and basically make sure that they're all recalled. So the department could basically, if there's an emergency of danger to public health, can take certain types of actions like issuing a recall. Section 11A and C, it removes references to HIPAA. So the protections are there, but it removes the reference to HIPAA as such. And really, there's a legal reason for that. And the legal reason is that HIPAA actually doesn't apply. We like to talk about HIPAA, but it's kind of like the specific HIPAA law has to do with the electronic transmission of patient data between a medical provider and an insurance agency or bill handling agency. So if your provider has a billing agency and the billing agency files with your insurance, HIPAA only concerns that, right? Like, we always talk about HIPAA, but that's all that it really concerns. So it doesn't actually apply to our medical records for the OMMA. And so that, just as a matter of technicality, is removed, but it's clear all patient information is sealed, that, with only special exceptions could it ever be released. 13E. If your physician cancels your recommendation, basically formally, it was just over with, right? Your physician cancels your recommendation, you're just done. The problem there is if your physician cancels your recommendation, your card is void, you have a law enforcement encounter, then theoretically you're now in violation of law. So the new language basically says if your physician for any reason decides to cancel your card, you're going to receive notice and you'll have 30 days to get a new recommendation, right? So that gives you legal cover. Next one, section 16H8. There's all these specifics that you can't have a business with certain types of felonies and so on, and adds to that if you had a business and your license has been revoked, then you can't get a new license for 5 years. So if they revoke your license for, I imagine, say some major violation, then that locks you out for 5 years. So that's section 16H8. Section 23B and also section 26 has to do with the establishment of a medical advisory board. So as mentioned, and as is stated in section 25, the OMMA is going to be separated from the Department of Health. That will take place next year, July 2021. And that there's going to be an advisory board. And I just happened to notice in section 23, it's referred to as an advisory council. In section 26, it's referred to as an authority board. I imagine that it's supposed to be the same thing, but the wording happened to change from 23 to 26. And so one of the things that Chris and I did when we met with Ron was we indicated that the former version didn't have any patient representation. Didn't have any patients. It didn't have any caregivers. It didn't have any parents of pediatric patients. And we felt that needed to be changed. So we argued that there should be a seat for a patient, and there should be a seat for either a caregiver or for the parent of a pediatric patient. So 2 additional seats got added. And so it's not just seats for processors, for law enforcement, and so on, for basically industry and government people. But this is a medical program, and we need to have the perspective of patients on this board. They understand the experiences and the difficulties and the challenges and the needs and the values of cannabis in a way that business owners may not, in a way that government agencies very well may not. And look, if you are a business owner, you might understand patient needs, but you also have business interests. So the language as written in this bill is the seat on this board for the patient and the seat on this board for the caregiver or parent of pediatric patient. They can't have any business involvement, right? They cannot be owners. They cannot receive any financial remuneration at all from businesses to be eligible for that seat, because you don't want a conflict of interest. You want somebody who's purely speaking as a patient for those seats.
Okay, so that's a pretty hard look there at 3228. Now, this is in negotiations between the House and the Senate right now. I think I could be wrong, but I think the way it's working is nothing's going to move farther until both sides agree on everything, because of the limited bills they're running. So there is some scuttlebutt going on right now. I've messaged all the senators that I have in my contact list, including my own. I would ask that you guys do the same. I've told them that while the bill's not perfect, that as of now, under these circumstances, we support this bill. There's still work to be done, but that work can be done the day after this bill passes, because it is just legislation. It's not a constitutional amendment, and we can change it next year. You were going to say, Lawrence?
Yeah. So, I spoke with somebody yesterday, I won't use that person's name, who opposes it, who doesn't want 3228 to pass. And this person sent me a whole bunch of screenshots circling language, and almost overwhelming, almost all of them, but 80% of all those passages weren't actually the language from 3228, but it was the language from previous legislation that this is simply amendatory to. And so, yeah, there are parts of previous bills we still want changed, but it wasn't about the new content. Now, the only 2 things, if I recall, that were raised as concerns by that person about the new content was, number 1, the seed to sale includes seeds. And so that could be additionally burdensome for a business to have to say, we planted 128 seeds, and some of these seeds germinated and some of these seeds didn't. But, again, I don't know how owners that is. Businesses are going to have different perspectives on it. I spoke to a friend of mine who owns a business, and he said it's not a big deal. That's what he already does. So,
well, and again, as I said, the state hasn't even picked a seed to sell program yet. So that's a battle that can be handled another day. All these things that aren't perfect, I believe, are battles that can be handled another day, because of the long list of good things that we've talked about that this bill will accomplish, that we need this year, that help expand access.
And it worries me too, because there's interest on the part of patient advocates and there's interest on the part of businesses, right? The goal of the business is to make money. The goal of the activist is, we've sort of pillars of activism, right? To expand access, to overcome the stigma, to end federal prohibition, and to speak the truth. Those were the four that Chris and I talked about recently. That they may not always accord with the goal of a business, which is to make money. And sometimes they coincide and sometimes they don't. And so part of the reason why we have homegrown is because that keeps power in the hand of the individual. That says the businesses can't take over control completely. We always have the right to grow our own.
Yeah, that's how we keep them in check.
And so, we value businesses, we respect businesses, we want businesses to be there for the sake of the patient. But not all businesses are there for the sake of the patient. And it's a matter of degree. And some of them are just trying to make as much money as they can. And who knows what happens behind the scenes when they say they're for patients. But are they really? Are they being honest about their product, right? Are they speaking the truth? It's just like, I'm not saying that's businesses can't be trusted in general, but look, I don't trust Walmart. I don't trust McDonald's. I don't trust my local hardware person just because they're a business. So my goal is cannabis advocacy for the sake of the patient. And sometimes the business perspective and the patient perspective don't coincide. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And when it comes to the issue of whether or not, we need to have tracking from the seed onwards, I understand there's a difference of opinion about it. But to oppose a bill that allows for delivery, to oppose a bill that expands access to anybody and everybody beyond this state, they just have to get a card, but anybody could get a card. Those are incredibly beneficial things for human beings in need of medicine.
Hey, Lawrence, I just got a message from Representative Scott Fettgetter.
Yes.
He said that the part about the OMA being separate from the health department, he had to pull out. So this is still pretty fluid. That's going to have to be done in the bill next year, apparently. So we sit on that one for a little while. I guess that's happened recently in negotiations. So,
well,
he hasn't told me about any other changes that we don't know about, though.
From patient perspectives, I'm not sure whether or not that's as much of a priority, right?
Right now, it's not as much of a priority, but it's one of those things that's only a priority when it's a priority, meaning when it's too late. So I understand why it has to come out. There's a lot of thinking that has to go into figuring that out. So if we can get this board created, that at least with the two card holders or one card holder and one caregiver, that at least gets us in the door. That helps.
Yeah, right. So I'd say that even if it's the case that the OMA is still part of the Department of Health, even if that's the case, then that antiquated food safety board notion, I just don't understand the logic behind that in 788 as opposed to a broader, more expansive board beyond just food safety. 788 authorized a food safety board, but that's it. And so presumably we should have an advisory council that's concerning cannabis that's more than just about food safety. And so if they do remove the language that has to do with taking the OMA out of the Department of Health, that doesn't mean they can't still have language that updates the whole food safety scenario.
Yeah.
So that's still a possibility.
Well, clearly I'm going to have to get a green screen because my blood pressure is too hot. It's a little warm in here, and so I've disappeared. Luckily, I wear glasses. Ooh, look at that. That's kind of weird.
So you're the Cheshire activist.
Am I? I look like an invisible man. Like I could just if I could peel my hair off, then I could just disappear.
So, well, this is sort of the wonder of Zoom. So, I feel like the idea of patients over profits, I'm 100% on board with that. Absolutely unequivocally and unambiguously, I'm in support of that. But let's be honest here, right? The goal of a business is profit. And so some businesses might be willing to reduce their profit for the sake of a patient, but they won't be in business, right? Unless they make a profit. And sometimes that profit does come at the expense of what is ultimately best for the patient. The goals of the patient and the goals of the business don't coincide when it comes to our healthcare system, when it comes to hospitals and physicians. They're completely at odds with each other, right? So businesses are looking out to make money, and
Yeah.
patients are looking out.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, yeah. It's just different interests, right?
Yes, we
We're
are
a
not.
capitalist
We are
society.
not. We are not saying this in an accusatory way or like they're evil and we're not or anything remotely like that. We're just trying to explain that there's a difference and just objectives do matter and we have one and that's it. It's
Right.
pretty simple.
So, you know, I am here, right, on this show, and I've been involved in this movement for over 2 years now, for 2.5 years now. I was one of the organizers as part of the Yes on 788 campaign. And I've been involved in all this purely because I believe in the medical value of cannabis, and I also believe that the war on drugs is abominable. And so, my professional life, as we started out talking today, is extremely busy. But I'm part of this because I want the world to become a better place. And so I'm thrilled by 3228. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it does some really fantastic things for patients. And we shouldn't let business owners squash patient needs.
Yeah.
Priority is patients, not profits. And let's keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's more than just a bumper sticker. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap it up. We've been going right at about an hour. That's about long enough.
And let's thank Ron for all of his hard work, too.
Yes, thank you to Ron Durbin for all his hard work on that bill and for taking the time needed to address some issues with us and to get all those cleared up. We appreciate that. I do want to address that just briefly. I should have addressed this at the beginning when there was a few more people watching, but I noticed somebody took the time yesterday to post a video, and the only thing I get out of the video was that he had confirmed that I was not working or we were not working with Ron Durbin. I found it astonishing that that was worthy of a video, but I guess it was. So for everybody that is wondering, here it is. As you just heard, when it was necessary to do something that we felt was right for the patients of Oklahoma, we reached out to Ron and we had conversation with Ron, and Ron reached back and we worked together on that issue and came to a resolution. Should that need arise again, I imagine the same thing will happen. I know we'll go through the same process of reaching out again and working with him with an open mind. That's it. Okay. This is about doing what's right for the people of Oklahoma. This isn't about egos or views on Facebook, I assure you. So
Let me say this, Ron is an attorney for cannabis businesses, right? Ron makes a living by receiving compensation for the time that he puts into representing cannabis businesses, right? So I imagine that that's the dominant perspective that he has, that neither Chris nor I make any money related to what we do as advocates. I know Chris in the past has received sponsors for his show and so on, but essentially, especially in my case, I have no financial connections at all to any of this stuff. I'm doing it solely out of my own commitments, personal commitments. So sometimes Ron and our views will coincide and sometimes not. Sometimes the views of a business and a patient will coincide and sometimes not. But we just need to respect one another. We just need to understand that we have overlapping, but not perfectly overlapping visions. And we want to be able to respect one another and not demonize the other for saying, well, he disagrees with me, so he's evil. Disagreements because of different priorities, but that doesn't equate to being good or being evil. So whether or not we're working with Ron on this or working with Ron on that or not working with them or whatever, the fact is that he has goals as an attorney for businesses. We have goals as advocates, and there's going to be a fair amount of overlap. Sometimes it doesn't overlap. A lot of the time it does. And we should simply just understand the fact that when there is an overlap, it's because we have different priorities, but doesn't make one person good and one person evil.
Yeah, and as you see here, we've not impugned the character of anybody in talking about this. We've given equal respect to everybody's view in talking about this. I'm going to ask directly that everybody else try and do the same thing, because I find that it's almost impossible for me to even do a post about moving forward with the future without somebody putting a comment in there about how I'm in this for some sort of financial gain. But these same people won't pick up the phone and call me or sit down with me and have a cup of coffee. We're not impugning anybody's character. I'd ask that everybody stop doing it to us. But anyway, don't really care much about that right now. All right, folks, I would ask that everybody do what you can. Let your senator know that you support 3228. We need that this year. It will help us this year. What isn't perfect, we can work on next year. That's how legislation works. It's not a constitutional amendment. It's not that hard to change. So, and according to the Constitution, the legislator has to wrap up the session in May. So we don't know what day that is, but in May, there's going to be a call for sine die. And if we haven't got this bill through, we're out of luck. I can tell you there's a whole lot of other bills that needed to go through that aren't. So we need the help in promoting this bill. Call your senator. All right, go ahead.
One more thing. The last thought I want everyone to leave everyone with is one of the crucial things that this bill does is it makes our program accessible to people outside of the state. And what does that mean? Somebody with a tumor in Texas needs Rick Simpson oil. And if this passes, they have access to it. And if this doesn't pass, they may not have access to it. Their situation might be such that they could just drive from North Texas into Oklahoma and stay here, receive treatment. And it may not be viable for them to do that in Colorado or wherever else. This is about people's lives. This is about giving people in other states an opportunity to save their lives and to provide for them, provide for their medical needs. And there'll be people who may die, and there'll be people who will be unnecessarily suffering if this doesn't pass. It's not perfect, but there are lives at stake. That's why this matters. This is why this is important.
Okay, well, can't put it much plainer than that, so I don't think I'll try. That's going to be it for tonight. We've got some other things to talk about, but we'll save that for another show. Maybe we'll do this. Maybe we'll go back to doing this more frequently. I don't know. We'll see. But that's it for now. All right, folks. Until next time, stay grumpy. I'll see you on the road. See if I can figure out how to end this. No, it's telling me how to. All right, wrong button. There we go. All right, folks. Be good.